What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today I have my Los Angeles Chargers season preview for y'all, so let's hop into it. And if you like this type of stuff, please consider subscribing. But anyway, last year the Chargers finished with a 10-7 record, which was good enough for second place in the AFC West, and they clinched a playoff spot. And they ultimately lost, or should I say, they blew the wild card game 31-30 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And yeah, that game, it was not fun to be a Chargers fan. I'm not a Chargers fan, so it didn't bother me, but I could just imagine the pain that Chargers fans felt when they blew that game to the Jaguars. But anyway, moving on from that. And the Chargers, they honestly, they didn't have a flashy offseason. They didn't go out and make a whole bunch of deals. They didn't go out and win the offseason as some teams tend to do. And they just kind of kept it in-house. They did make a couple free agent signings. They brought in linebacker Eric Kendricks, wide receiver Darius Shepard. Those were kind of like the more notable guys that they brought in. And the Chargers, they have a good roster. They don't need to go out and spend a ton of money to improve the guys. Like, they have a good group. They have a solid young quarterback who they signed to that 5-year extension in Justin Herbert. And they also were able to re-sign other guys like offensive tackle Trey Pipkins, defensive end Morgan Fox, punter J.K. Scott, kicker Cameron Dicker, tight end Donald Parham Jr., center Will Clapp, wide receiver Jalen Guyton. So, like I said, they didn't really go out and spend a lot of money and bring in a ton of guys, but they did re-sign the guys in-house, key players to this team. I know it was headlined by that Justin Herbert extension, but as long as the team has him at quarterback, they will be just fine. And on top of all that, they didn't really lose anybody as well. Like defensive back Nasir Adderley, he retired, linebacker Kyle Van Noy, and backup quarterback Chase Daniel. So, in addition to everything, they didn't lose too many players. They didn't really sign any players. They kind of just stayed where they were and just added through the draft, which there's nothing wrong with that. They did, however, get a new offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore. So, that'll be interesting to see how he changes this offense. I doubt he'll change it too much because Justin Herbert is going to do his thing. They got reliable wide receivers. They have one of the better running backs in the league in Austin Eckler. So I don't think it's going to be too much change. And they also promoted Derek Ansley to defensive coordinator, just a guy within the organization. So I don't think those moves will really impact the team too much. And like I said early on, they did get some talented guys in the draft. With their first pick, they took wide receiver Quentin Johnston out of TCU. They also drafted linebacker Tui Tuluipu, linebacker Dayan Henley, wide receiver Darius Davis, offensive guard Jordan McFadden, defensive tackle Scott Matlock, and quarterback Max Duggan. So they actually drafted 3 TCU players in this past year's draft, which I thought was pretty funny. It was Johnson, Davis, and Duggan to be a backup quarterback. So they really didn't have a ton of picks in the draft, but they did get some quality guys that can make an impact right away. And they also got some guys that can just be depth guys. But overall, just once again, not too flashy. They didn't really do too much. They just they were content with their situation. And there's nothing wrong with that in this league. I know a lot of fans want their teams to go out and draft the best players, go out and sign the best players. And in reality, you don't really need to do that to be competitive. And the Chargers, I think, are the team this year that just kind of did that. They kind of stayed content. They didn't go out and do too much. So yeah, with all that in mind, let's move over to their schedule and my record prediction for the Chargers. All right, now, so in week 1, they have the Miami Dolphins, and I feel like this will be a really good game to watch. I do have high hopes for both the Chargers and Dolphins. I think they would both be really good teams. And because of that, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the home team. And with this being a Chargers video, that's a good thing because the Chargers are the home team. So right here in week 1, they get the win against the Miami Dolphins. And then in week 2, they go on the road and play the Tennessee Titans. And I do think the Chargers will win this game just because they have a more explosive offense than the Titans. The Titans are one of those teams that just they run Derrick Henry, they kind of grind out the clock, they get the lead early. And the Chargers are a team that's like, you want to have a shootout, let's have a shootout and we'll win it. And because they have a more explosive offense, I think that can get them the win here in week 2. And then in week 3, they travel to Minnesota to play the Vikings. And I think this will be another really good game, kind of on par with their Dolphins game. I will give the Chargers the loss right here because Minnesota is the home team, so they get the benefit of the doubt. And then in week 4, they play the Raiders, their first of 2 matchups against them. And I feel like they will sweep the Raiders this year. So I'll give them the win right here in week 4, as well as down here in week 15. And that brings them to their week 5 bye, which is really early. And I don't think they should have bye weeks this early. I think all byes should probably be within like the week 7 to week like 13 margin in there somewhere. You know what I mean. But anyway, they're sitting at 4-1 at their bye week, which is really good. And then coming out of the bye week, they have the Dallas Cowboys, and I think this will be another really good game. But they do have an extra week to prepare for the Cowboys, and with that extra week, with it being at home, I do think they will get the win over the Cowboys. And then they play the Kansas City Chiefs on the road the following week, and they will lose this game right here to the Chiefs. But then they rebound nicely with a win over the Chicago Bears at home. Then moving up here, they have the New York Jets on the road. And once again, I think the Jets are an improved team, but I don't think they're going to hold up well against the AFC powerhouses. So I think the Chargers will beat the Jets right here. And then the following week, they have the Detroit Lions, who I am super high on this year. And I think the Chargers might overlook this game a little bit. And because of that, I do think they will lose to the Lions. But then they rebound nicely with a win over the Packers the following week. And then the following week, they have the Baltimore Ravens. And this, once again, will be a really good game, but I do think the Ravens will probably win it. I do think the Ravens are just a little bit better than the Chargers. Hopefully, Lamar Jackson stays out of injury troubles. And with this, I do think the Chargers will lose to the Ravens. The following week, they have the New England Patriots, who I think they win relatively easily. And then they have the Denver Broncos, who I think they're going to split the season series with. So right here in week 14, it's at home, so I will give them the win right there. And then in week 17 is away, so I will give them the loss right there. And then we already talked about the Raiders, them sweeping the Raiders. And then they have the Buffalo Bills, which I think they ultimately lose again. Even though it's at home, I think the Bills at this point in the season are playing the best football. They're pushing for that playoff spot. They're pushing for a top seed in the playoffs. In closing out the season, they have another date with the Kansas City Chiefs. And at this point, they already have 10 wins. They've probably already clinched a playoff spot. And so I think they probably are resting key players, and they lose this one as well, losing the final 3 games of the season, but still making the playoffs. So not too bad for the Chargers, and that brings their season total to 10-7 once again. Good enough for a wild card playoff spot. The Chiefs probably ultimately win the division again, but I think it was once again another good year for the Chargers. But this year, I think the big change is they won't blow the wild card game that they play in. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this record, what you would change about this. But anyway, like the video, please subscribe to the channel. I will catch you with another season preview. God bless.